Allow me to extend a warm welcome to all the viewers on the internet and around the world. It is sunrise on YouTube, morning on Facebook, noon on Twitter, midday on Threads, afternoon on Twitch, sunset on Instagram, and evening on Rumble. I am your host, the Ancient One, the Bachelor Supreme, the Phantom Menace, he who remains, and the master of the deceptive arts. We are broadcasting live directly from the sanctum of solitude and the citadel at the end of time. Good evening, everyone. I am the Ancient One, the Bachelor Supreme, the Phantom Menace, he who remains, the master of the deceptive arts, and I return to you once again as the voice of the Vasectomites. Today, I wanted to look at a very misunderstood word and term, and quite frankly, I believe a misunderstood concept. And that is the concept of commitment. As is becoming the norm in our quest for better understanding, I think it's always imperative for us to define what we are talking about so that we can have a meaningful, thorough discussion that will provide clarity and understanding, right? So, along with the word commitment, I would like us to analyze another word, a word that I believe is complementary to the word commitment, and that is the word loyal. Right, so we'll look at the meaning of the word commitment and the word loyal, and hopefully that will add a deeper level of understanding and also a deeper level to today's conversation. If I have to be quite honest with you, I hate having gaps in my information, right? So to me, having gaps in information feels kind of like drawing an incomplete circle, right? So even like the smallest gap, even like the smallest, incision, if you will, kind of disqualifies the figure as a circle. So it's a semicircle. It becomes kind of like a circle-ish, right? But it's not really a circle, right? It's just a described but undefined and undefinable object. So in the name of being thorough and having a well understood conversation, I think we have to define words and then have our conversation around what the word means, as well as perhaps the connotation, the feelings, the connection that words have and denote, induce, not denote, induce in people. And for me, what really kind of aches in the back of my head is the knowing that there's something that I don't know that kind of bothers me, kind of eats me up a little bit, knowing that there is a gap in information in what I'm describing. Like if I had just described the word commitment and left out the word loyalty all throughout this monologue, it would just be bothering me. Like I'd just be like, why didn't I just define loyalty? There've been times when I've been like 10 minutes into a video and stopped and started again because there was a word that I should have defined along with another word, and it just bothered me. I don't know what that says about me. I'm not a perfectionist, but I just like to be thorough, right? And I really also feel like the audience deserves the fullness of the information, right? I feel like at the end of the video, an audience member needs to leave fulfilled, right? Maybe not fulfilled, but you need to have information, more information than what you might actually need or use. Like a cup isn't full until it's overflowing, right? Until then, it's still kind of empty, right? So let's fill in those gaps, make sure that this cup of ours is overflowing, and let's look at what the word commitment and loyalty means. So, commitment has two definitions, right? And there is an irony in these definitions, and let me read them before I discuss the irony. The first definition of commitment is, and I think this is more for us, the vasectomites. So you'll first identify that the one definition is suited for vasectomites, while the other definition is actually suited for benders and counterparts. And this is the irony here. But it says commitment, the state or quality of being dedicated to a cause, activity, and belief, etc. Let me read that again. The state, the situation, quality or characteristic, right, of being dedicated to a cause, right, to a cause. Say, for instance, you're dedicated to helping men get over the concern of having a vasectomy. Let's say you want to promote the vasectomites and the bachelor life. This is your cause. This is the activity, getting that vasectomy, right? So you have a cause, you have an activity, freeze your sperm, get a vasectomy, and a belief. And my belief is that the bachelor life, being a vasectomite, is salvation. And it is salvation from the damnation of legal matrimony, marriage, and the dark dimension, right? A beautiful definition, right? Synonyms of this definition include devotion, allegiance, an oath, a vow, a promise. Just listen to how positive these words are, right? And I gravitated to this first definition. I said, this is the one for the vasectomite. A state or quality of being dedicated to a cause, activity, and belief. I like that. The second definition, on the other hand, this is all about you knee benders and you counterparts. It is an engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action. Isn't that just what the dark dimension, legal matrimony and the dark dimension is all about? Engagement, right? Right there, engagement, right? On the one hand, something that you have to do, something that you are in already. On the other hand, the word engagement means the thing that you are after you are proposed, when you are someone's fiance, right? You are engaged. Obligation, right? Something that you must do, like a responsibility that restricts freedom. This is freedom of choice, freedom of movement, freedom of self-determination. All kinds of freedom is gone, and says freedom of action. So you can't move. You can't do nothing. Oh, it's like being in prison, right? Commitment is like being in prison. Synonyms of this word include responsibility, charge, liability, and a tie, something that ties you down. A tie is something, so if you have an anchor and you have a rope attached to the anchor, that rope is the tie. So it's tied to you, and on the one hand, it's connected to an anchor, keeping you down, but on the other hand, it is or on the other side, it's attached to you. So you have no freedom of movement, right? So very clearly here, you can tell that the word commitment is in fact a word that is ambiguous but also its own opposite, right? So these two definitions, while they're of the same word, and it's very rare that you find words like this, that the same word is the thing its own opposite. Like the word read and read, where read is the like it's what you're doing now, and then read, I read a book, it's in the past, right? So a state or quality of being dedicated to a cause, activity, and belief. This first definition implies choice. It implies a decision, right? Devotion, allegiance, oath, vow, promise. I make this promise to you. I devote myself. I choose to make this oath, this promise, right? This commitment. I impose this on myself. Whereas the second meaning implies that the commitment is imposed on you. The word obligation removes choice. An engagement or obligation. The word obligation is something that you must do. So a parent is obligated to the child, right? To being responsible for the child. You have no choice in this matter, right? That restricts freedom of action. Listen to that. Restricts freedom of action. This implies no choice at all. So on the one hand, you can make a commitment by choice. On the other hand, you can have a commitment imposed on you. This is a very ironic word. It's a word that is its own opposite, right? So remember that. When people are talking about a commitment, you have a commitment, you are in a committed relationship. That means you are in a relationship that restricts your freedom of action. Whereas the other, if you commit to yourself, you can devote your allegiance and make a vow and a promise that you will be loyal to yourself. And let's segue on that note to the word loyal. The word loyal, on the one hand, means faithful to one's oaths, commitment, or obligations, right? So a commitment is a state of being dedicated to a cause, right? It is being in an engagement, right? Being loyal means holding steadfast to that obligation, to that commitment, to that oath, that promise, right? So, on the one hand, you commit to the bachelor life, to being a vasectomite, but on the other hand, you hold on to that commitment, right? Making the commitment is one thing. Holding on to that commitment, that is loyalty. And loyalty is tested over time, right? Loyalty is tested over time. Commitment is made in an instant, and loyalty is tested over time. This is an important definition to know. When you are faithful, it says faithful to your own oath, commitment, and obligation, right? And then the second definition is of a person. So someone who is reliable and always true, right? So on the one hand, it is an action. On the other hand, it is a person, or a description of a characteristic of a personality. I am someone who is reliable and always true. I am someone who is committed to the bachelor life, and I am true to that. Even if I engage in the romance wars, my commitment to the bachelor life will come before any counterpart or any knee bender. And this is something that I aim to prove as we go along. This statement that in fact commitment, it's not a real commitment and it's not real loyalty unless it's permanent. And this is the difference here between the benders, bachelors, and the vasectomites. You see, a bachelor can be made to bend the knee at any given time. You could be the most dedicated bachelor in the world. You get somebody inseminated and pregnant, you're going to bend that knee. You're going to be a bender, right? They're going to make you bend that knee and you will never unbend that knee. But if also you are a knee bender, right, and a vasectomite, you got to stand where you're standing, right? The difference is we get to choose where we stand, whereas the knee benders and maybe some unfortunate bachelor who didn't go get his vasectomy is going to be made to bend that knee. You are going to be made to uphold this obligation, an engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action. When you bend the knee, literally and metaphorically, you cannot move. You ever tried to move with one bent knee? There's no moving. You are stuck in that position. It is not just a figurative meaning, it's also literal, right? But by being loyal and being reliable and true to yourself, right, you therefore maintain that consistency over time. Again, it's not a commitment unless it's permanent. It is not a change unless it's permanent. And a vasectomy is permanent. You freeze your sperm, you get that vasectomy, and you say, I'm making this commitment to myself. I am now a vasectomite. Right? You dedicate yourself to a cause and a belief by taking an action. Whereas if you look at the other side, this engagement or obligation that restricts your freedom, this responsibility, this liability, this charge, right? The synonyms: responsibility, charge, liability is one of those synonyms. And this tie is going to induce in you the need to circumvent that obligation, right? In other words, you're going to cheat. You're going to cheat, right? Now, there is a statistic that says that 20% of people cheat in relationships. I don't think that statistic is accurate. I think what that statistic actually says is that people cheat 20% of the time in their relationship. 100% of the people will cheat, but they'll only get an opportunity to do so 20% of the time, right? And thereby, they will cheat, right? Now, if you look at the words in the first definition of commitment, right? These words are often associated with, the second definition, I beg your pardon. These words are associated with commitment to other people, right? Or another person outside of yourself, right? An engagement or obligation that restricts freedom or action, responsibility, charge, liability, or a tie. These are things that are usually outside of yourself. So think of things like family, your ethnicity, which is something really that no one can control, your nationality. These are things also that you cannot control, and to a large extent, your faith and political allegiance, right? There are people who will side with a political party, even though that party is wrong and even though that party is losing, right? And only because sort of they made a declaration right at the beginning, committed themselves, and now they have no freedom of movement. So you can't really change allegiances, even though you realize that you're on the wrong side. You just have to fight all the way through, right? The word commitment is rarely associated, or rather, the meaning of the word is very rarely associated with the bachelor life. Or with the vasectomites. And I think this is deliberate. It is wrong. It is a very wrong belief, as I've demonstrated. And I think that this is very deliberate, right? What they've done is they've looked at the second meaning of commitment and then associated that with the word loyal, which means faithful to one's oaths, commitments, and obligations, and being someone who is reliable and always true. And they've associated that with knee benders and counterparts, saying that you two need to be reliable and true to each other, and you need to be loyal. What they remove is the state of being dedicated to a cause, activity, and a belief. What they remove is the devotion to one's own cause, right? And they have disassociated bachelors and vasectomites wrongly to commitment, when in fact it takes a tremendous commitment. I tell you, it takes a tremendous commitment for you to be a bachelor for life. In this world full of these knee benders, just billions and billions of knee benders, all telling you all day long, 24 hours a day, your entire life, telling you to go against your instinct and bend that knee. You have to disagree with almost every single person on earth about bending that knee. And you got to do it as a child, as an adolescent, as a young adult, and as a grown up, as a full blown adult. As an adult, and the ancient one can be almost 100 years. At this point, I could care less, because I've seen the full destruction of marriage, divorce. I know the statistics. 99% of you are going to get married, and a huge majority of that is going to get divorced. And those of you that don't get divorced are going to be miserable, and you're going to be having affairs. It's just going to be chaotic, right? As an adult, it's an easy thing to see and an easy thing to avoid. But imagine being a child, being told your entire life, you're going to get married, you're going to get married, you're going to get married. And your instinct is telling you, hell no. And you having to fight that instinct against family members, people that you love, people that you trust, against media, against music, especially in the 90s, the age of R&B, the age of rom-coms, right? When all you could do was watch rom-coms. We used to watch action movies where the entire world was about to explode and the hero would stop and kiss his girl. For like 10 minutes, he's kissing the girl. The whole world is falling apart. Only to indicate to you that this is the priority. Bending that knee. Having survived that and still know that you are right from the beginning, that takes a tremendous commitment. That takes a commitment for which I don't think most people will have. Right? Because you go from one relationship to another relationship to another relationship, from one marriage to another marriage to another marriage. The last people I want to hear tell me about commitment are these knee benders and these counterparts. Even the ones of different faiths and theologies. Some of these are getting married 4 times, these people. And divorced and married and divorced and married, relationship to relationship. The last thing I want to do is listen to you people tell me about a commitment when I am in a state and I have the quality of being dedicated to my cause, to my belief and my activity, and I have showed devotion. I've given my allegiance. I have kept my oath, my vow, and my promise to myself and said, Bachelor for life. And here I stand today, the Bachelor Supreme, right? Here I am today, the Bachelor Supreme, having earned it for decades, over a lifetime. I've been preaching the bachelor life since I could speak, advocating it in the most difficult situations, watching them go from relationship to relationship to relationship, and the only time they are actually loyal and faithful in any relationship is when they have an obligation that restricts them from freedom of movement. It is only when you are tied down, when you are forced, when you are in an engagement and a marriage, only then do you show a responsibility after you've been given a charge, after you've been burdened with a liability, with tremendous responsibility, after you've been tied down. Only then are you showing some type of commitment. And that's absurd. That's absurd, right? You can be, as I have been my whole life, my whole entire life, committed to yourself and the belief in the values of the self. Self-determination, which I motivate every day. Self-preservation, which I motivate every day. Self-control, the key to the bachelor life. Understanding that you cannot control anybody other than yourself. More so, you have no legal right to do so. And it is foolish to therefore try to control your counterpart, to try and control your children, because you cannot. Get yourself a vasectomy and freeze your sperm and exercise some self-control. We are talking about self-reliance. To be able to stand on your own 2 feet against the entire nation of benderisms. The entire nation of the bender. I'm talking about self-commitment. Being committed to yourself. Being dedicated to a cause, activity, and a belief. Freeze your sperm and get that vasectomy. People often focus on one aspect of commitment, the aspect that benefits them. If that was not true, you wouldn't have words like betrayal, divorce, breakup, cheat, or any other words that indicate or trigger the inevitable and predictable end to all these endeavors and these romance wars. If you were all so loyal, why do we have so many words that indicate disloyalty? Right? Why are there so many words that indicate and demonstrate disloyalty? You see, what prompted today's discussion was a trip that I took outside the sanctum of solitude. And I went out and I went into what I call the Earth Corporation. The Earth is really just a giant business. And if you cannot see that, guys, you're just living in a dream. Right? Look around you. Everywhere you go, every shopping mall, every district, it's a business or something that facilitates a business. But while I was out and I observed just the magnificence of this enormous business, right? I mean, it's just a wonderful, wonderful structure. Everywhere you go, they've got you spending money, right? I took a moment to observe more closely the consumers, the bachelors, the benders, the counterparts, their fledglings, right? The young and old, the new and the ancient. And all of them are just there to spend money. Some are even spending money that they don't have, right? It was at this moment that I had this inclination, a brief inclination inside me. And it was a familiar inclination that I'd had before. But I haven't had this inclination in a long time, right? The last time I had this inclination was really a few years after I got my vasectomy. So I got the vasectomy, and then still had the inclination, right? But then soon it just started to dissipate, and eventually it went away. And I have the vasectomy to thank for that, right? But this desire was it was it was the desire to be desired. You know, when you're out and you see someone attractive, and you you indicate to yourself, at least you acknowledge within yourself, that you find this person attractive, right? But then you have the unshakable desire, right? At least for the untrained and the ones that haven't evolved to being vasectomized, you have this desire to have a desirable person desire you, right? So this isn't like I didn't want to act on it or anything. I was just moving about my business, and I'm sure that person was doing their own thing. But I noticed them, and I thought, that's an attractive person, and moved on with my life, right? I didn't engage them or anything like that. I don't do that. Tried it, failed, not doing that again. But having observed them, I wondered to myself, would there even be a possibility of them finding me attractive? And the answer is really no, right? The answer is really no. I'm far too ugly to be found attractive. Really, you're going to see my face and be like, oh, that's why he hides his face, right? That's how, there's a reason. And it's justifiable. You should consider yourself quite grateful that you don't have to look at my ugly mug all day long, right? But on to the point, right? Even after all that I know, all that I've seen, all that I've experienced, 100 years of the ancient one's life, right? That inclination, that instinct is still there. It still persists, right? It still tells you, go, 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 right? And eventually, everyone succumbs to it. Everybody answers to that call, right? Especially the knee benders and counterparts. Eventually, you surrender to yourself, right? This is the first thing that you surrender to, right? It's your own desires and your own proclivities. There's an instinct within you that is going to ultimately lead you to bend the knee. You betrayed yourself. Despite the cost, despite the expense, despite the loss, and what you know is the inevitable and predictable end, the inevitable and predictable outcome, you're still inclined to persist, to engage in these relationships and this romance war. And it's absolutely fascinating observing this within myself. And I mean, of course, I dismissed it quite easily, right? Because I'm a vasectomite, and that instinct is slowly fading, quickly fading, and being replaced by self-determinism, right? Freedom, liberation, knowing what waits for me there, right? Been there, done that. No, thank you. It's not the life for a bachelor, right? But I was able to quickly dismiss this. But it's easy for me to say because my reality dictates this. I have no choice. I got that vasectomy, right? I am a vasectomite. What benefit would desire serve to me now? Being desired by someone. It's just an ego boost. Really, there's no biological benefit for me being found to be desirable, right? Now, my own desires are one thing, right? But the desire to be desired is really quite something, right? Something to behold. And it can make you betray yourself, right? It's not so much that other people can induce you to to break that commitment, right, that you've made to yourself, it's really more that you will break that commitment within yourself, right? My interactions and interest with any counterpart is really going to be social, right? Because I have no capacity for biological connection, a biological bond, or a biological commitment, right? My biological imperative has completely been reprogrammed, completely changed, right? Every single interaction or encounter with a counterpart is always social for me. It's impossible for there to be any other way, right? Even intimate interactions, they must all fall under this category of socializing, right? It's just socializing, because what possible thing can I do now to replace the outcome of this vasectomy? What possible what could I do, right? Even if I wanted to go under the surgery to replace it, I would have to go under a full blown surgery. Not just that 30-minute procedure that I had in my urologist's office, in and out. No. I'm talking about a full blown surgery, right? With like a less than 10% chance of succeeding. I'm not doing that. I already froze my sperm. Why do I need to go back to this, right? I realized that in that moment, I had moved past the need for reminders and daily affirmations to steer me in the right direction. I don't need the reminder every day I'm a bachelor for life, like what you see in the picture. And this used to be me, and very much it still is. I'd wake up every day and make that oath to myself and say, henceforth, I shall be a bachelor till the day I die. And I've made that affirmation every day since I thought of it as a boy. I remember the day I thought I will be a bachelor till the day I die. And I have never changed that statement, nor will I ever. But I realize now that having got that vasectomy, I've evolved beyond the need for the statement. Even if I said I'm not going to be a bachelor anymore, I don't want to be a vasectomite anymore, I'm sick of all this, I'll still be a vasectomite. The best I'll ever be is some stepdad. And I'm not doing that. I'm not raising somebody else's kids. I'm far too narcissistic for that. Right? So we all know I'm not doing that. Right? And I'm definitely not getting married. Right? That's just a bad business decision. So what need do I have for daily affirmations? What need do I have for reminding myself of my commitment? I don't. I don't need to reaffirm my status as a bachelor for life, not even my status as a vasectomite. I don't need to do it even to myself or to my own benefit. But you do. If you still haven't got yourself that vasectomy, you need to remind yourself every single day to go against the thing that you desire the most. You need to be so disciplined, so focused. You have to just remind yourself to not be attracted to an attractive counterpart, and all day long all you're going to see is just one attractive one after another, or after another. And if you don't have these daily affirmations, these daily reminders, the ancient one coming here every day telling you get a vasectomy, protect your seed, protect your solitude, eventually you're going to forget, right? You're going to become intimate, and you're going to inseminate and impregnate a counterpart, right? And that's just the inevitable outcome. I have the statistics to prove it. It's like 95, 98, 99% of you are going to become fathers by the time you're 55 to 60. It's a guaranteed at least once, right? And It was then that I realized that getting a vasectomy was the ultimate act of commitment to the bachelor life, and to myself, and to my beliefs and my fundamentals, right? I am constantly in the state, and I constantly have the quality of being dedicated to my cause and my belief through this action. Like change, and I said this before, a commitment isn't really a commitment until it's permanent. And getting that vasectomy and freezing that sperm is absolutely permanent. And it is a commitment that you make to yourself. And today's article will demonstrate the benefits of staying true to yourself by being loyal and committed to your ideals. And hopefully, it'll convince you to do the logical thing, which is to freeze your sperm and then get your vasectomy. So, the article is entitled What It Really Means to Be Committed, subtitled Reframing Commitment So It's Not So Scary. This is by Dr. John Amadio. Please forgive me if I mispronounced your name, Dr. Amadio. And he is a PhD, I believe, in psychology. This article comes from our friends over at psychologytoday.com. I'm spending a lot of time with these people. Now, I have to admit that I'm not a firm believer in psychology for many reasons, but I do think that it has its place in philosophy and helping to understanding things, especially mental processes. Psychology is actually very useful in isolating individual patterns of behaviors, right? And then defining those individual patterns. The issue that I think that psychology faces in terms of criticism is that those patterns are not always easily identified, and they don't play themselves out as they are always described. So, you might meet someone that's at the end of a certain type of pattern and assume that the previous characteristics don't play themselves out, when in fact they're only at the end of that pattern because of those characteristics. It's a very difficult thing to do, especially with dishonest people. You really can't get to the root cause of dishonesty. And psychology really works if people are looking to see themselves as they are. It helps if you want to look into a mirror and see the truth, rather than looking into the mirror and see the promise of a better day. And I think a lot of people come into psychology and therapy with the aim of improvement, self-improvement, rather than seeing themselves as they are, right? And as soon as they see themselves as they are, when the therapist really describes who they are according to psychological terms, people get very upset. They change therapists all the times, right? So it has its place. In my opinion, psychology really has its place, especially in academia. The practice of psychology is something completely different. But Dr. Amadia has been practicing, I believe, for something like 40 years, right? So he's been doing psychology since his youth. So it says here key points. One, commitment starts with self growth. Oh, I like that, self growth, and embracing one's true self. Isn't that what we are about? Right? Seeing ourselves as we truly are. Bachelors, vasectomites, people who should not be having kids, right? Number two, being committed to a process of honesty, openness, and kindness begins with emotional honesty. There we go. Be honest with yourself. Know thyself. That's the first thing I try to get into everybody's mind. Listen, man, if you have certain habits, certain proclivities, you have to know thyself and act accordingly. Number three, Relationships thrive when partners commit to the process, not being attached to the outcome. So he's going to get into that a little bit later on. Uh, Relationships, man, you're just looking for trouble. Really, you're just looking for trouble. In the age of digital phones, smartphones, I don't know about all that. It says, what do you feel inside when you hear the word commitment? So, what is the connotation? What does the word evoke inside of you? For some, it evokes a longing for safety and security in a relationship. See, this is that second definition that we talked about, right? No freedom of movement, just committing to other people. For others, it stirs anxiety, right? If you misunderstand the term, but we understand it that it has two completely different and opposite meanings, right? And without that other understanding, it may stir anxiety, even fear. While some people crave commitment, others run in the opposite direction. This is us. We run from commitment from others and we run towards commitment to ourselves, right? Opposite definition, or same word, opposite meanings. But what does commitment really mean? What exactly are we committing ourselves to? This is the question I asked myself when I thought about committing to a counterpart. I thought, what exactly am I committing myself into? What am I saying that I'm going to be doing every single day, weeks, months, years, for the rest of my life? And this is what you need to think about when you get into these romance wars. What exactly do you think you're getting? Right? You need to ask yourself that, because what you're not getting is an everyday lingerie model. That's not what you're getting, man. You're going to get slapped with reality. And that reality is going to bring all your delusions coming crashing down right on your head. It continues here, and we can relate to it in a way that is life affirming rather than constraining, right? Remember, now we're talking about two opposite meanings. One side, commitment is life affirming, right? When you have dedicated yourself to a cause, but on the other side, commitment is restricting, right? Co- uh, Rather than constraining is the word that they use here. I like that, constraining. Having practiced psychotherapy for 45 years, that's right. Dr. Amadi has been in practice for 45 years, maybe more. Yeah, so this article was published on the 7th of March this year. So this year, I'd suggest he's on his 45th year. That's a triumph. That's a triumph, really. 45 years of a career. Congratulations, doctor. You have my respect. I've witnessed many meaning. I've witnessed many meaningful, thriving partnerships. I've also seen people make commitments without really understanding themselves. Know thyself. Dr. Amadio is hitting all the right notes today. Know thyself, or what they're committing themselves to. You hear that? When you commit yourself to a counterpart, you commit yourself to that person, right? You can't control another person. You cannot make them commit to you. It is you committing yourself. And indeed, you can also uncommit yourself, right? I myself have committed myself to a counterpart, regretted it, and I've uncommitted myself, and I've reaffirmed my commitment to the bachelor life. I say reaffirm that commitment to the bachelor life, and I did it in the most resounding way by getting that vasectomy. And you need to get your vasectomy, right? Ask yourself, what are you committing yourself to when you commit yourself to a counterpart? Because I can tell you what you're committing yourself to when you get a vasectomy: freedom, peace of mind, self-determination, self-preservation, self-love, self-commitment, knowledge of self, self-growth, right? Man, I need to sit down and look up all the words that define the self. right? So we can know what we're talking about when we're talking about themselves. But what are you committing yourself to? A lifetime of bills, my brother? A lifetime of bills, my friend? Child rearing? Arguing with teenagers over boys? Trying to stop a teenage girl from meeting with boys? Until she turns 30, then all you want is for her to get a boy. This is ironic, it's confusing. Man, get a vasectomy. What are you committing yourself to? Dr. Amadia is asking the same question. He continues to say, some marry and have children, only to later realize that they've become intimate strangers, not really knowing each other, not feeling connected, and not actualizing the satisfaction and hopes they felt early in the relationship. Man, I need like a bell for this doctor. We have to ring a bell for Dr. Amadia because this is exactly what is happening. It starts off good, but you get married, you have children, you're in the dark dimension of legal matrimony, and then you realize that this isn't working. That this isn't working. We are just strangers, but we are intimate strangers. We don't really know each other because she's changed, I've changed, her interests have changed, my interests has changed. We're not connected. We are not reaching the satisfaction and the hopes that we had when that relationship started, and the relationship is now turned into a nightmare. And this happens all the time. This happens all the time. Better to commit to yourself. Better to commit to yourself, man. Get a vasectomy and live the bachelor's life, right? Do the right thing. Make that commitment. Freeze your sperm. Get a vasectomy. This is an understatement that Dr. Amadia is making here. It's an understatement. He's really just brushing over what that feels like. You have to look at this person every single day and realize that you're not feeling it, they're not feeling it, but neither one of you can go. And thereby you start torturing each other, accusing each other, lying, keeping secrets, living miserable instead of just being open and true to yourself. You know, you have really now fulfilled this second definition of commitment, an engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action. A liability, a responsibility, a charge, and a tie. That's really what you have in the latter years of the Romance War. That's really what it's about. Being committed to ourselves, Dr. Amadia continues to say, a healthy commitment to others begins with being committed to ourselves. As I wrote in The Authentic Heart, this involves a commitment to be honest with yourself about how you feel, what moves you, and how you want to live. He says a commitment to others begins with a commitment to yourselves. Rather, I would say a commitment to others begins with a betrayal to yourself, especially if you said you're going to be a bachelor and then you go ahead and you bend that knee, right? That's a betrayal to yourself, I think. Right? That's why I got that vasectomy, because I didn't want to take that chance, right? But you do have to be honest with yourself about how you really feel, what moves you, and how you want to live. You have to look at your good parts, your bad parts, the legal parts, and the parts that are gray areas. Will allow you some gray areas, right? And you need to decide if you want to live in those gray areas or not. And then you need to decide if you're going to practice the deceptive arts in order to, how you say, cloak, how you tamper down those gray areas. You have to know yourself and be true to yourself, your feelings, how you want to move and how you want to live, right? He continues to say the best gift we can give others is to be committed to our own growth, and I agree. The best thing you can do for yourself is to make yourself rich, not because you're competitive, but to relieve other people of having the obligation to care for you. Right? If you care about other people, make yourself rich so that you don't have to be a burden and a liability to them. This is the best thing that you can do for others. Right? He continues to say this means one, knowing and valuing ourselves deeply. Know thyself. Listen to me. Know thyself. Do not go up against your instincts because you're going to lose. Your instincts are going to betray you every time, and you're going to end up getting somebody inseminated. And then you're going to end up living a life that you never wanted to live. Know thyself. The most important person you can know on this earth in this life is yourself, right? Number two, honor our true feelings and vulnerabilities. I'm telling you about your proclivities. Maybe I need to take a moment and discuss these proclivities, especially for men. What we like to do is have our proclivities and those type of things. We like to use those things as a point of interest to induce others to know things about ourselves, that we have another side to ourselves, right? The biggest mistake that I would ever make is reveal to anyone that I am, in fact, the Ancient One, the Bachelor Supreme. Because then they'll have a real target to come from, and they will massacre this whole thing. And I would too. Right? I would too. I'm out here telling men to get vasectomies. It's not because it's illegal, it's because it is socially taboo. Right? And there are people who don't want their family members getting this idea. Right? There are men who would get a vasectomy and just do the most outrageous things. And people don't want that. But you need to have that choice. You need to know yourselves deeply and know if I get a vasectomy, I'm running wild. Know that and prepare for that and act accordingly. Prevent those STIs, prevent people getting violent and belligerent with you. Protect yourself at all times, right? But know your feelings and know your vulnerabilities so you can know thy enemy and know thyself, so that you can know the outcome of every battle. This is really right in the heart of what we're talking about. And then number three is meeting ourselves with self-compassion. I like that. Self-compassion rather than toxic shame. I'm not a big fan of shaming myself. Even when I'm wrong, I really just stand on my own side. I'm not about to disagree with myself. No matter what the situation and the outcome is, I'm always aware that under certain circumstances, I'm always acting in my best interest. And sometimes I get it wrong. And sometimes I've gotten it wrong in a serious way. But I am also aware that in those cases where I've gotten things wrong, it's usually because I've been attacked by more people. Remember, it's just me. I'm the Ancient One, the Bachelor Supreme. You don't need many people to outnumber me. All I need is two people in an office building to spread rumors about me, and I'm done. Right? I don't need more than that because it's just me. It's really just me, right? There's no army, there's no groups of friends, there's no posse, no crew, right? Nothing like that. So I'm always acting in my own interest, right? Rather than shaming myself. But I'm also aware that it doesn't really take much to defeat me, right? Anonymity is really my best ally. Coming out here trying to get people's support, no way. That's not the bachelor's life. You're not getting mass support for this message. It's just you. It's just you in the bachelor life, and you have to accept that. And looking at men over 35, there aren't really any bachelors. There might be some men who desire the bachelor life, but there aren't really any true bachelors. You know, you all have kids and responsibilities and that kind of thing. But ultimately, this message is for young men. And this is what makes it so, taboo. Because effectively, I'm talking about the future fathers of tomorrow, right? And these are the future customers who are going to be buying things for kids and trips to Disneylands and cruises and such. And they've built an entire industry around entertaining your kids, and which you have to pay for. So, I am aware that this message, especially because it's for younger men, this is where the bachelors are under 25, under 27. There might be some people who are inclined to not allow this message to go. Those people are not urologists. Urologists will happily receive this message, but there are others who, don't benefit from this practice. Self love isn't just a vague concept, it means giving to ourselves what we seek from others, including kind attention, care, self forgiveness. Oh, that's another lovely word, self forgiveness. When we stumble, I'm all about self forgiveness. I'm all about self forgiveness because I'm all about self forgiveness. I'm really not about judging myself harshly, even for like severe, serious mistakes. Like I've made some very serious mistakes in my life, even legal mistakes I've made, not knowing that I'm breaking the law, that kind of thing. But I'm really not about to judge myself harshly, nor am I really about to punish myself. I'm not the punish yourself type. As far the furthest that I will go in terms of punishing myself is admitting wrong to myself, and I'll say, you know what, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. And really, this is the issue that I feel with these romance wars and these counterparts. Like, I've made a tremendous amount of mistakes in these romance wars, and the first mistake I made was participating in them when I knew I shouldn't have, and then spending a tremendous amount of money trying to entertain a counterpart that, quite frankly, I knew I wasn't compatible with and shouldn't have been with. I should have left that person years behind. That being said, I also don't blame myself for remaining in the romance wars. Why? Because had I shifted strategy, the chances are I would have gotten somebody else pregnant. And the fact that there were so many years where I was without a vasectomy and the counterpart was with birth control and could have just been doing any number of things that I was unaware of. That birth control was a tremendous advantage to me. Without that birth control, I would not have arrived at this destination. At least, I'm not sure if I would have. Right? Inevitably, I would have just gotten somebody pregnant. Right? As many benders do. As many benders do. So, you gotta give yourself kind attention. Right? Don't be against yourself. Take yourself seriously, be strict with yourself, uphold standards, maintain standards, but really don't be unkind to yourself. Don't be unfair to yourself. Don't ever find yourself in a situation where you are not on your own side for whatever the reason. There are people who might tell you that your responses are inappropriate sometimes, right? Maybe. Your responses might be inappropriate, but your feelings are never inappropriate, right? I mean, you don't want to make decisions based on your feelings, but you do want to trust your instincts. So if you are being disrespected, if you are being undermined, if you are being overlooked, if you are being judged fairly, especially by these counterparts, you need to have the wherewithal, the fortitude to walk away. You need to understand the situation. You need to be able to walk away. And then you need to know that whatever you win, whatever you lose, you still acted in your self-best interest. Your first priority is, before gain, is to preserve yourself. First, protect yourself. First, put yourself beyond the possibility of defeat, and then wait to take advantage of the best opportunities. Don't go out looking for opportunity and then try and protect yourself from failure after. That is a bad idea. That is a bad idea. This is a guaranteed way to defeat. Trying to fight and then be safe? No. First be safe and then pick the fight, right? That's a much more meaningful strategy. But yes, Be kind to yourself. Accepting both our strengths and limitations, this is a very important thing strategically. Know thyself, know where you are strong, know where you are weak, know where you are vulnerable, and act accordingly. Right? Don't sit and pretend that you don't have strength. Don't sit and pretend that you don't have weaknesses, because your strength is going to bother people just as much as your weaknesses is going to be a liability for you. If you have weaknesses, you need to find a way to overcome them. And if you have strengths, you need to find a way to benefit from them, to capitalize on them, right? You need to understand both. But follow the simple strategy, right? First, put yourself beyond the possibility of defeat, and then go and pick the fight. Do not pick a fight first and then try and seek safety. You will not find safety once the war has begun. Safety is only guaranteed by you, not your enemies and not your counterparts. Number 3, taking responsibility for our shortcomings and making wise corrections. Right. Acknowledge your shortcomings and then make wise corrections. I support that fully, right? Take responsibility for your own shortcomings. So you made a bad decision. You made a mistake. You made a miscalculation. You were outnumbered. You were defeated, right? You are in an unfortunate situation. You need to make that correction. But you need to do it in such a way where you don't find yourself back in the situation that caused you unfortunate outcomes, or what they call shortcomings. You need to make your next move your best move. So put yourself in the best possible situation, right? Take responsibility for your shortcomings and then make wise corrections. This is a very good article. Meeting ourselves with self-compassion, another wonderful word. Self-compassion rather than toxic shame, right? This is one that he made before, right? Meeting ourselves with self-compassion, loving and caring for yourself above other people. This is not to imply that you have to be soft or weak or whatnot, but it means things like if you have to be in the gym every day, you got to do that in order to stay healthy and stay fit and look good, right? But if you can't be shaming yourself, right? There are days where I needed to go out, do some bills, run some errands, do some other things, came back and made a video and just was too tired to exercise, right? But today is not that day. Today is a day where I can do it all, and I will, right? So don't be hard on yourself. Rather, work on being consistent and self-compassionate. I like that. When we stop hiding from ourselves and others, we invite deeper intimacy. Please hide from others. Hide from others. Don't hide from yourself. Embrace yourself, but you can't trust these people, right? People are more likely to love and appreciate us when they see our authentic selves, or they could just hate you, right? They could just see how happy you are. They could see the bachelor life. They could see your savings. They could see that your spending is minimal, right? They see the way you live, your freedom. People hate that. People really, these knee benders, they just want you to bend the knee just like they do. Really, I'm telling you. The last thing a knee bender wants to see is another man living his life, right? He'll rather convince you to go make kids. They would rather have you have kids outside of wedlock without a wife and a spouse than for you to have no kids at all and no responsibility. So be careful with that. It says, rather than a version of us that we carefully constructed to gain approval. These are the deceptive arts, right? I'm telling you that if you are deliberate with the deceptive arts, you can be successful with them. But if you are going there with the aim of trying to be liked instead of the aim of trying to be effective, you're going to fail at that. You're going to feel like people love you for a fake rather than who you really are, when quite frankly, there's a chance that they may not like who you really are too, right? So they may not like the fake and they may not like who you really are too. So better for you to just protect yourself, right? Just be helpful, be kind, be generous, don't make any mistakes. When two people are each committed to becoming their authentic selves, they are prone to stay together, not out of obligation, but because the relationship remains rich and fulfilling. You're going to get cheated on. I'm just going to tell you that. This whole two people are committed to being their authentic selves. Eventually, it means that if I'm attracted to somebody else, I have the right to pursue that, right? Which is just gonna get more problems. But I just say be committed to yourself. Live the bachelor's life, get a vasectomy, right? I understand how it could be difficult to try and achieve the bachelor's life without a vasectomy. That's why you gotta get that vasectomy first. That's why you gotta prioritize that vasectomy first before you really attempt this, because it can be quite troubling. It can be quite troubling. And the reason I see people really not approve of the bachelor's life is because they assume that you're going to be reckless, that you're going to be leaving children and their mothers uncared for, financially destitute, in that kind of situation, right? So they don't really want that. What they want is for you to be able to take care of your responsibilities. And I'm saying move the temptation of having responsibilities to begin with. Because once you have those responsibilities, you can't, that's like picking a fight and then seeking safety. You know, first making the kids and then saying, well, how do I fund these kids? How do I keep these kids going? Right? That's a bad strategy. First, you should know how you're going to raise the kids before you have them. And for most people, that's really an afterthought, right? If they had thought about it, they would have gone to get that vasectomy and started by freezing their sperm. It says commitment to the process. Some people make or seek commitment from a place of fear. Sure, most people make commitments from a place of fear. I assure you, like, there are situations where people tolerate things in a marriage and in a commitment that they would never ever tolerate as a single person or a bachelor, right? There are certain things that people do to you in marriages, things that children say to you, that you would never tolerate outside of that environment, right? But in the dark dimension of legal matrimony and marriage, you gotta take it as it comes, and sometimes people will just be rude and belligerent and belittling to you, and you have no choice but to take it because you made a commitment to that person. You can make a commitment legally, you can make a commitment biologically, right? So you can say you made a commitment and then break that commitment and walk away. But it's not a commitment unless it's permanent. This is the point that I'm making. Marriage is a permanent commitment, as well as having fledglings, having children, right? That is a commitment. True commitment. It is never ending. It is never changing. You can't wake up one day. I mean, I suppose you can wake up one day and say you don't want to be married anymore. But the cost of that is so devastating, that for some people, they might as well just stay married, right? But kids, nah, that's a real commitment. It says, I need to be there for me because I don't know how to be there. No, I'm going to read that again. So you're making commitment from a place of fear. So number one, I need you to be there for me because I don't know how to be there for myself. Number two, I need you to take away my loneliness. To get into the issue of loneliness is going to be quite a long and difficult topic for bachelors. So maybe I'll leave it for another day. But effectively, loneliness and the need for someone to be there for you really comes from a situation of expectation versus reality. There are men who expected that they would grow up and get married and have a wonderful relationship and build grandkids and all that, right? So they spend their whole lives pursuing this. And if they don't achieve this, that disappointment creates loneliness in them. Like myself, I always pursued the bachelor life. So being in a relationship, in a romance was troubling to me. But for men who pursue family, want to be the head of a household, you know, they want to provide and protect and so forth. For those men to not acquire this can be deemed quite a failure, right? It can be deemed quite a disappointment. And thereby, what you're going to need is for someone to be there for you, right? Counterparts, they always need somebody there for them, for every need, for every single situation. But for benders, that loneliness situation really comes from disappointment, looking and trying to find something and then not being able to get it, right? And then realizing and then looking at other people thinking that they have something great and wanting that thing too, and then you get it and you know just how miserable they are. Oh, you're gonna regret it. You're really gonna regret having that person there. You're gonna miss your free time. That's the truth, especially if you're a bachelor. We're still talking about being committed to the process, and it continues here to say, but creating a mature relationship isn't about finding someone to complete us. This is true, right? Creating a mature relationship is not finding someone to complete you. In fact, maturing is not about finding someone to complete you. It's about committing to a process of emotional honesty and authenticity, right? It's about being true to yourself. Commitment vows that are not grounded or in such honesty may be destined to disappoint us, right? This is a fact. All commitment that is not made in honesty is going to end up in a disappointment. So if you're not honest to yourself, if you're not committed to yourself, eventually you're gonna go back into the romance wars. You're gonna remember why you decided to be a bachelor. You're going to try and go back, and a counterpart is going to tell you that they're pregnant. That chance that you had to get away and get a vasectomy, you didn't take it. That was your last chance, right? So be honest with yourself and act accordingly. Otherwise, you're going to end up you are destined for disappointment, according to Dr. Amodia. I almost forgot his name, Dr. Amodia, right? And I agree with the good doctor. I absolutely agree, right? You're not being true to yourself, disappointment is what comes your way inevitably. The key to healthy attachment and sustainable intimacy is building trust and knowing what it takes to do that. I think he's talking about commitment to other people, right? I'm going to tell you right now, whatever commitment you make to another person, they're going to break that commitment, right? Most people don't even keep the promises they make to themselves. So if you are thinking that, you said you were going to be a bachelor for life, then you got somebody pregnant, and then you bent the knee. So your commitment to yourself faded, and will you think that this person is now going to keep the commitment that you make to them after they watched you break the commitment you make to yourself? And do you think you're going to be committed to them, if they've dropped out of school or they've quit a dream? And most people have actually quit their dream. If you ask most people, what did you want to be when you were young? They ended up as something completely different. And it wasn't a matter of opportunity or talent. It was just a simple fact that they gave up on their dream and thought that something else would be easier, just for them to live a life of misery when they should have suffered for a short period of time so they could live a dream. They decided not to suffer for that short period of time and decided to suffer for the rest of their lives. It says being committed to a process, not an outcome. It depends on the process and it depends on the outcome, right? If you are committed to the process of being a bachelor, but you don't get the outcome of a vasectomy, eventually you're going to get a different outcome, and that's getting somebody inseminated and pregnant. You are going to bend the knee. There's a 99% chance that you're either going to get married or have kids or both. The statistics are there. You don't believe me? Go and research it yourself. go and search for what is the percentage of people that end up getting married by 65 years old. It is something like 99%. And then find out how many people get married at least once by the age 65. It is somewhere in the high 90s, 95, 96%. So what are they telling you? You're either going to have kids, or you're going to get married, or you're going to do both, right? This is the outcome. There's a process to getting you there. And if you are committed to whatever the process it is, you need to get to the outcome. So it really depends on the process and the outcome. It says our best assurances for longevity in our partnership, right? He's talking about relationships, is to remain fulfilled in our lives and in the relationship. You're not going to remain fulfilled in a relationship, not for long. At best, you're getting 4 good years. After that, it's downhill. No matter how strong our intentions, relationships can't thrive if one or both partners are riddled with unhappiness, unresolved wounds, and breaches of trust that aren't repaired. This is exactly what you're getting in a relationship. If you are committed to yourself, right, and you get that vasectomy, I can promise you that you can thrive by yourself. You can be happy. You can resolve whatever wounds have come from your past, whatever happened in that romance war, whatever betrayal, right? And you can resolve any breaches of trust that you may have incurred by getting a vasectomy. It sounds like an extreme thing, but I had been in a point where, quite frankly, I had had enough of these counterparts. But knowing that betrayal, lies, deception, all of that comes with the romance war, I didn't try to go and find someone that was perfect. I just corrected myself and put myself in a situation where it didn't matter if the other person was perfect or not. Right? Because now this is too much of pressure to put on one person. You're out here trying to look for a person who can resolve your wounds, fix your happiness, and have no breaches of trust. You're not going to find that. We're more likely to cultivate and sustain happiness if we're both committed to a process of what it takes for trust and intimacy to thrive, rather than being attached to an outcome. Man, you guys are just setting yourself up for disappointment here. You know, he had me when he was talking about self-committed, but this, I think he's talking about relationships here. Really, what he says here, you're not going to cultivate, in other words, nurture a relationship, sustain happiness if we're both committed to a process of what it takes for trust and intimacy to thrive. That's not happening in a relationship, right? That's not really happening. Most relationships, I mean, like I told you, people are going to cheat on you 20% of the time, minimum 20% of the time. That's just what they'll admit to. Instead of focusing on how we think a relationship should turn out, we're more likely to cultivate a lasting connection by being committed to 1, healing old hurts and toxic shame, 2, developing the awareness and skills to navigate conflict and build trust, 3, prioritize openness, honesty, kindness, and self-revealing communication. That just sounds like you're asking for trouble, if you ask me. As a person who's been in and out of the romance wars, I'm telling you, you're going to get betrayed, especially in the days of digital communications. Now, you might be betrayed by being with another person, or you may be, by her being with another person, or your partner being with another person, or you may be betrayed by the things that they say, or the things that they allow other people to say and do to you. So they may very well allow family members to disrespect you and then put you in a situation where defending yourself is an unreasonable outcome. And if you do, they're going to say you're overreacting. It was just a joke. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a joke, right? People sometimes slip up. They say the things that they're meaning that are inappropriate and out of place, or they say the things that they are comfortable to about saying. All right, they say the things that they're comfortable saying about you in secret, right? So they'll say those things in public, right? So they might have a nickname for you that you don't know about, right? And that nickname will slip out, and you'll be like, "Who's that?" And they'll say, "Oh, it's no one. No, bro, it's you. It's you. You're the nickname, right? You're the banana man, whatever they call you, right?" So I'm telling you, you're not going to be able to heal old wounds. You will not avoid toxic shame, not from a counterpart. Those people are nothing but toxic. And they love to use that word, toxic this, toxic that. A person who uses the word toxic is toxic themselves, right? I'm not a person who uses toxic in most of my language. I use bachelor, self preservation, self determination, right? This is what I'm about. A person who uses toxic a lot is toxic themselves, right? Let's continue. And finally, it says, we're not meant to journey through life alone. You see, now there he's lost me. We are meant to journey through life alone. The most fulfilling partnerships are created not by clinging to perfectionist standards, but fitting ourselves into some model of how we think we should be, but by being committed to our growth, both individually and as a couple. So he's doing couple stuff. Yeah, he's really talking about relationships here. I disagree, man. I've lived a bachelor's life and I'm pretty satisfied. In fact, the only time where I felt down in my life was when I wasn't a bachelor, when I was in the romance wars, when I'd actually had enough of the romance wars and kept it going, right? And since then, I've just like I've been living the bachelor's life for a very long time. I'm in such a point now where being in a relationship, quite frankly, seems very stressful to me. It's just an effort that I'm not willing to make. I could do it. I thought I was a wonderful boyfriend, despite the fact that all my relationships ended, and the fact that now I'm just too old to be dating. But it would just be awkward for me right now, if I have to be honest. And this is what I think most people want. You want to stay single so long that dating feels weird, right? So that, when you're going out there and you're dating in this restaurant, and you just not feeling comfortable. You just don't want to be good at dating. And if somebody is good at dating, well, I mean, that tells you everything you need to know, right? You've done it so much that you're actually pretty good at it, you know. I'm okay with being committed to my own growth, but growth as a couple is something that, I mean, divorce tells you that it's something that's quite impossible to do. The divorce statistics tell you that it's quite impossible to do. I mean, you can grow to a certain point, and then after that, it's just deterioration, right? It's really not happening. He concludes by saying, if you're seeking support, connecting with a therapist may be helpful, perhaps. You can visit the Psychology Today therapy directory to find a professional who resonates with you. So go ahead and look them up at psychologytoday.com. They have a tremendous number of interesting articles, very well written by some very professional and experienced doctors like Dr. Omedia, who has been practicing for over 45 years, which is a tremendous feat. But this is the end of the article and truly the end of the video. And I believe that I have driven the point forward and indicated that, in fact, self-commitment is the best way for a bachelor. But you need to indicate that self-commitment by taking the right steps, right? You need to get your vasectomy. You need to freeze your sperm. You need to protect yourself and your solitude and your seed, right? Against all incoming problems, right? Against all enemies, against all outcomes. This is really what I'm trying to talk about. And effectively, we're talking to young men who really are not sure about what's waiting for you on the other side. I'm telling you, if you get into this legal matrimony and marriage and that situation, all you're going to get is misery. And I can't describe the full extent of that misery because I've never been married myself and I never will be. But I can tell you what people who've been in it have said, right? And maybe you need to go speak to them and listen to them, right? It's rare where somebody tells a 21-year-old, yeah, go get married. This is all internet talk. Go talk to them face to face and they'll tell you, man, you want to hold off on this situation because this thing is for life and it'll ruin your life. So be committed to yourself. If you're 18 and over, you can definitely freeze 100 million, 200 million, 500 million sperm, which is more than what you'll ever need to have a kid, and then go ahead and get your vasectomy and live your life. But if you're really looking to be the head of a household, I suggest doing what the prognosticator says. If you can't afford to get a divorce, just don't get married. And many of you can't afford that divorce. The best thing you can do is be committed to yourself and stop pretending that you're ready to be a father, you're ready to raise kids, you're ready to have a family, because you're not. You're really not. And I know there's so many men who are just not ready for this responsibility. And you'll know it when you're in it. And to say, you know what, I really wasn't ready for this. But now that I'm here, I'm going to try and do what I think is the right thing. Ultimately, you're just not going to pull it off. So take a moment, and think about what committing to yourself actually looks like. And think about the outcome, as Dr. Almodi has said today. What steps are you going to take to ensure the outcome in your life, the right outcomes in your life? Because if you're going out there without that vasectomy, you're going to get somebody pregnant. I guarantee you. And I guarantee you it's going to ruin your life. Then what? You can still get a vasectomy afterwards to contain the destruction, right? You'll get a vasectomy to contain that destruction, and maybe that's the best thing to do, after you've learned your lesson. But some men, they don't want to learn their lesson. They just want to keep going and keep going and keep going. 3, 4 kids later, there's men having children in their 80s. This is a very serious thing. It doesn't go away and you can't turn it off. So the message is always going to be the same. Commit to yourself, stay true to yourself, preserve yourself, freeze your sperm, get a vasectomy. I'm never going to get tired of saying it. I'm a very persistent and stubborn person. I can do this all day, all the time. I'm going to stop now and then think about what else I'm going to talk about. And then end it with the same message. Freeze your sperm and get a vasectomy. Thank you for your time and your attention. I appreciate it, and I always will. I am the Ancient One, the Bachelor Supreme, and I'd like to wish you a lovely, lovely day.